And as you would have heard me say, that's exactly what we're doing. And we continue these conversations with amazing people. As you know, every Wednesday we do this amazing feature with Katie Mohamed, who is an activist, author, entrepreneur, deep thinker, and a bit of a social mover in the fact that she gets us to socially think about our relevance to things. And she's quite topical in that. I just gave Katie a hug as she came into the studio, and I could still smell London on her.
Well, fresh off the plane.
Fresh off the plane. And as you know, this Winning Women Wednesday feature is in partnership with Katie and her organization, and it's all about women empowerment. How are you doing today?
Great today. Got up today and feeling blessed and, as we say, favored, highly favored.
Blessed.
Blessed and highly favored.
While you were in London, I know we spoke last night, you met a ton of people, but you were there also for a summit. Just maybe share with us, Katie, just some of the insights coming from that forum in terms of how we're still in Women's Month, we're still dealing, talking, thinking about, engaging with women's related issues. And I don't want to make it sound like it's women's physical issues, but really about the spaces that they occupy, which I know you are fanatical about.
Yeah. I think it's not only challenges, it's also opportunities, because it's really both on the thing. And it
needs to be balanced.
And I always say that the conversation it's not just a conversation, it's a movement. And we should stick to that conversation. So when I spoke to everyone last week, I was at
Westminster. You sent us this beautiful video.
Yes, it was
and
quite nice.
We were so jealous of you.
But it was freezing. But of course, Duke University, under their Duke Corporate Education Initiative, had their Lead Her conference and their summit. And when I was on air, I hadn't gotten to hear any of the speakers. So basically, the highlights for me, and I said, was Professor Ashley Rosette, and she's a professor of leadership at Duke University, and she spoke about the confidence ask, owning your power in negotiation, and it really was so relevant to us as people in general. Women, it's different because I think it sometimes comes across as flirting if you are trying to talk to someone about a contract, but you know, one thing that stood out for me was really about what makes great negotiations, and it's really about clarity. It's about being confident. It's about being able to articulate yourself clearly without hesitation. But she took us through a great masterclass on the owning your power in negotiation. The one thing I was looking forward to was the future of aging, which I said to you was about healthy longevity and financial security, that we as women, and as we get older, it's something that we start taking seriously. But I always say to women in their younger years as well, don't wait for getting older to talk about aging and financial security. So I think that was the conversation, is we as leaders at the height of our careers, we start taking that seriously because we're so busy running and in the hustle of everything. So she spoke about brain health, financial security, just the intersection of longevity. And I think I love that. It's like if you do not sleep well, you're probably going to have a more risk of dementia, as an example. So it's those kind of things. Don't undervalue you sleep.
Which we do.
It's
because the first thing we're willing to trade.
Absolutely. And having a nap in the day also doesn't fix it, right? And try to get into that REM sleep, because that helps us look good, feel good, make proper decisions the next day. So that was a really great conversation. Another one that stood out was really the first female Prime Minister of Australia. She spoke about Julia Gillard, and I also met with her as well. And the one thing that stood out with me is that she said that, you know, when men have the conversations about women advancement and empowerment, people take them seriously. But when we are doing it as women, it's like, oh, you know, here you go. It's now the Katie Mohamed thing. And that's what she was talking about, allyship and how important allyship is. And she was saying that in her tenure of being the Prime Minister, when men when it was a decision around or a conversation when men were having and people were taking them seriously. So she was literally saying, we have the power in our collective voices and the strength of shared experiences. So she says, let us stand up for what is right every single day. And she said that we need to have a power in collective voices together with our male allies. The one thing that stood out, what she said, is she says, I gain more insight into how and to what the extent the racial element influences a woman's career development. And for me, as women, in an African continent, that stood out for me. So yes, I got to meet Cheche, who's a friend of mine from South Africa, who you know is the Zambian ambassador, and now in the UK, and also having, she invited me to go to the Mexican ambassador's residency, and it was all about art, and you and I spoke about this last night. So London for me was just an exceptional cultural experience this week, and I loved it. So,
and I think what you always do well is that and I think this is also a tip for women in general, is I've never not seen you own the space that you walk into.
Thank you, and I take that, because sometimes when I do have a bad day, I do have people that would say to me, "It's like, you are the light in the room, and we do know that you're not having a great day." And now I always under pressure, it's like, "Oh my God, do I put up but people that know you, and I do appreciate that, and I realize that even in a city like London that has, it is just a diverse group of people, you actually don't know who's who, but people talk to you, and that's what I love about it. You could be a plumber, you could be a CEO in the subway, and people have a conversation with you. In South Africa, we are nervous about speaking to people because we don't know what they want from us. So
I was about to say that.
That's that. So yes, London is always for me close to my heart. Got to meet family, which was really good, always good. But yeah, it was really freaking cold, but I loved it.
Key takeaways for you, because I know you run women empowerment events, you women dialogues, you facilitate those conversations, and you do them at scale, right? What was the key takeaways for you that maybe the question should be, what were you looking for and what did you find?
I think just my experience there is, the more we educate, the more we advocate, and the more we act, the closer we get to a more just, equality, equal world that is real. And I think for me, that's what I got coming back from there. And also as women, just get on a flight and, don't catch feelings, catch flights.
That should be on a t-shirt. Don't catch feelings, catch flights. I think you might have to register that. Somebody's going to add that into a song somewhere. And there's a rapper who's gonna use that line. Yeah, and Bilo's like, yeah, definitely. That's a very clever line. You're working on something very big called WIN.
Yes. So the Women Investment Network is part of Wsuite, which is the movement that I've created years ago. It's a dedicated platform where women connect, create dialogues. So this year, with the whole theme of how do we accelerate action, Women Investment Network, and it just worked out great that it's actually called WIN, because when we win, the world wins. When women win, the world wins. So one thing I really wanted to do, the purpose is that, how do we accelerate action? And one of the most key things is getting people together and getting people, corporates, government, entrepreneurs, to commit to pledges for the next year, to say, actually, this brand is going to ensure that there are 10 new board members, women board members in my organization. Somebody said, I'm looking for enterprise to adopt enterprise development companies in my company. So for me, I'm creating a platform. It's happening next week on Thursday, the 26th. And if anyone's keen to join, follow us on Wsuite, send us a DM, tell us why you'd want to be part of that. But for me, it's getting people together and really finding out about what is the best way to invest in women. And it's not necessarily money only. So it's how is that conversation.
Great question, actually, right? That's a great question. And did you see that come up in the UK?
I did. I must say, the one thing is I learned something, and we talk about mentorship so loosely around the world. We talk about mentorship. I have mentees. I'm a mentee myself. The action part of it is, how do we keep the mentorship that we have, but how do we get into a sponsorship? And how do we become sponsors to women? How do we become sponsors to either corporates or entrepreneurs or other business leaders? So for me, it is, how do we now invest in women, which means how do we get to sponsor women? And it's not like, hey, here's X amount of money for you. No, it's how do sponsorship is more of an investment. Mentorship now is more of a direction, guidance. It's a little bit loose. So again, that's what I like about, one of the takeaways is that how do we move, we do need mentors, but how do we get sponsors? Because I think the youth, women, and people in general need more sponsors, because that's where the impact is.
Yeah. And so do you think, Katie, with what you're talking about now, that we're going to have more meaningful conversations now if we're talking about sponsorship versus mentorship, or sponsorship aligned to mentorship? Do we now need to have proper conversation of the role of mentorship? Because it also feels that it's fly by night sometimes. It isn't structured. You said it's loose sometimes. Do we now need to also elevate that conversation?
Absolutely. And I think I came back knowing that is the conversation I need to elevate in everything that we do. He said, how do we become sponsors, and how do we get people sponsoring women and us in general? So yes, it's a conversation that I'm now wanted to take on and find. And I think people are doing it, but I think it's if enough is not enough. We need more of that. We need more sponsors in our lives.
And as you talk about that, another question comes up. And obviously you're very focused on empowering women. But how do we now get the shift from mentorship has always been, as you've said, it's about direction, and so it was mostly about time. Sponsorship means that there needs to be an investment. Not to say time is not an investment, but what would the environment need to look like for us to now move away from, not necessarily move away, but maybe more inclusive around the sponsorship idea? What would we need to set up now to start thinking like sponsors?
Well, I think we need advocates, right? We need a group of advocates to say, I'm going to help with career development. And I think, sponsorship is that kind of thing, career development. Career progression as well. If you look at people in companies, like how do you get people to progress? So you do need people to identify, and we can't, because I think in South Africans, I think we always like, I know Samm, so he's going to do this for me, or he's going to give me this job, or all of that, and then somebody else would say, oh, Katie got it because she knows that. We need to stop thinking like that. Yes, Katie got it because she has a great intentional relationship with Samm. So I think we must get away from actually feeling bad that I might have gotten an opportunity because of somebody. Yes, I'm putting myself out there.
And people have leveraged those relationships for years.
Absolutely. And it's an investment. So what happens to people in general is that they're too afraid to make decisions. They're too afraid to give you a gig. Oh, people are going to say that you are my friend. Yes, you are my friend. You should be giving me work. It starts from there, because I'm not going to let you down. So I think for me, that's an important conversation that we had, is that we need to have our friends to act as our champions. We need to have...
And stop being ashamed of it.
Absolutely. And we need to have people that know us to act as champions for us.
I love that. I wonder what the economy, what the space would look like. And then what would you say to people that are saying that's kind of already happening? If you look at, for example, things like nepotism and all of those, that to a degree it's a form of nepotistic relationships, right?
And why is it a bad thing? Because if it's a trust fund person that offers a nepotism idea or opportunity, it's okay, right? If your father or your grandfather or somebody thinks,
or if it's family related,
it's okay. I am saying is that if if we are able to do the job and you say, well, I know this person, why not? Yes, there are levels of how you do it. Of course, you've got to follow due process, you've got to all of that.
All of it.
But
that doesn't negate any of that.
It doesn't negate any of that. But if I stand up there and if I'm getting 10 out of 10 on something, and you can't say, oh, God, I don't want to give her 10 out of 10 because somebody might say that I know her, whatever. You've got to be an advocate, and you've got to be my champion and say, I know her, she's going to deliver, she's going to make us look good, she's going to be a strategic partner for this.
And then you have to step up and deliver.
Make sure that I step up. So the whole nepotism, yes, but I mean, it's a problem when people are lazy. But I think as South Africans, most of us are not lazy. We want the work. We want to do the work. So I want to be surrounded by champions.
And it's framed around this concept or idea of what sponsorship means.
Yeah.
I love that, and I think that opens up for so much. And I, as you're talking, I'm wondering, the whole idea of going to events is to network, and to network with like-minded people, and hopefully they then become part of your tribe. You would then have to say, I met this person at an event, I really like them, but I can't give them the work because I like them. That doesn't make sense, right?
It doesn't.
So this idea of sponsorship. Mm-hmm. As we wrap up now, and I know you've got a busy day as well, you're running off to a big brand South Africa event.
Yes. Brand South Africa hosts a nation brand event every year, and part of their main purpose is to really get corporates and government in a room together of how they could contribute and create a great nation brand together. Because if we work in isolation and silos, we're not driving an agenda of a country. So that is what's happening, and I know that there's some really great panel discussions, and I will probably get somebody from Brand South Africa to come on to talk to you guys about what the outcomes were. I think that's the most important thing. The other thing before we go is that we need to talk about human rights, because it's Human Rights
on Friday, yes.
Human Rights Friday. And the one thing I want to talk about is that women's rights are human rights, and it should be recognized as a human rights. And I think we always tend to separate them, and we shouldn't, because it's part of. So we are saying ensuring women's rights and recognize it as human rights requires us to for action. Again, going back to action. Mm-hmm. So the more we educate, like I said, the more we advocate, the more we take action, the closer we get to a just and more equal world. So for me, women's rights are human rights, and it's all up to all of us to ensure that the message is upheld. Is heard and upheld.
That's amazing. And your big tip for Women Winning Wednesdays?
A winning woman is not the one who never falls, but the one who rises stronger every time she does. So keep pushing, keep believing, and keep showing the world the power of your resilience. Your story is still being written, and the victory is already in your favor.
I love it. And on that positive note, that's where we're going to leave it. See you again next week.
Cheers.